Today I'm going to try to tell you about the trouble that broke out not long ago between Aunt Sophy and King David. That's Jethro Noddy's billy goat. First of all, though, I'd like to say that opinion is divided here in Pigeon Inlet as to which one of 'em is in the right. And if there could be a vote on it, I wouldn't be surprised but what King David 'd go in with a sweeping majority. Personally, he'd win my vote, because even though I got a high regard for Aunt Sophy, still, right is right, and wrong is no man's right. Here's another funny thing. I've read or heard somewhere how a fellow said one time that this life was like a big wheel always turning over, so that what was on top now would be sure to end up on the bottom some time later on. Well, whoever said that never spoke a truer word. 'Cause look what's happened now. Only 2 years ago, I had cause to abuse King David for stealing me cabbages, and Aunt Sophy took his part and was on the out with me for weeks about it. Now she's mad with King David, and in all fairness, I had to take his part this time, and she's on the outs with me again. Well, here's what happened. Up till a year or two ago, Aunt Sophy used to keep 3 or 4 sheep. Then she give it up. Like she told me it was too much trouble for a woman when there was no man around the place. Well, ever since then, she's had a little problem about what to do with her potato scraps. She used to save 'em in a little bucket in her back porch, and every Monday morning she'd put 'em out. Well, King David got to know Monday morning just as well as if he'd had an almanac to go by. I don't know how he figured it, but he did. It wasn't by the clothes on the lines, 'cause even on rainy Mondays, he'd be there just the same. And when Aunt Sophy had put the bucket of scraps outside her back door, he'd just say whatever grace he says and dig in. Aunt Sophy said afterwards, trying to defend herself, that she usedn't to notice he was there. All she said she'd do was put out the bucket full and take it in empty an hour or two later. Well, that might be, but one thing for sure, if she didn't know, King David did, and it got so we used to look forward to it every Monday morning. Well, 3 Sunday nights ago, coming home from church, Emma Jane Bartle happened to tell Aunt Sophy how hard it was to get food for her 3 sheep, and Aunt Sophy promised to run across next morning with her bucket of potato scraps. And so next morning, with poor King David all ready to ask whatever blessing goats do ask, Aunt Sophy went right by him with the bucket right over to Emma Jane's sheep's house. The only time she looked back was to admire her lovely wash that she had out on the line that fine Monday morning. She says she didn't even notice that King David was there. She noticed him on the way back, though. First thing she spied was the big gap in her line of clothes, where her best tablecloth had been hanging. Next thing she noticed was King David trotting off down the road, towing the tablecloth along behind him through the mud and the slush. So Aunt Sophy went wing and wing after him. I missed that part of it myself, but Sam Pryor told me afterwards that when they passed along by his place, 'twas something worth seeing. Aunt Sophy said put him in mind of the old Paulina in the song. He was looking out through the window, and he hurried and put his boots and cap to chase him. But when he got there, 'twas too late. What seems to have happened was this. Aunt Sophy got close enough to tread on the rear end of the tablecloth, and that, of course, brought King David up into the wind facing her. But he didn't let go. Well, she scooped up a mixture of mud in her hand and hove it at him. Now, any schoolboy in Pigeon Inlet could have told her that was the wrong thing to do. But by this time she'd lost her temper, and then she made the biggest mistake of all. She looked round for a rock and spied one just behind her. So she turned around to pick it up. 'Twas stuck into the ground, so while she was trying to prise it loose with her fingers, King David had plenty of time to survey the situation and figure out what he could do to vent his spite at Aunt Sophy for throwing the mud at him. Grandpa Walcott often says that an old man looks back at the happy days when he was young and wishes he could have the same chances over again. Well, I imagine the same thought was in King David's head when he viewed Aunt Sophy with her back turned, trying to pick up that rock. To him it must have looked like his happiest days had come back again, and he'd better not miss this golden opportunity. According to Sam Pryor, who was just too late to save her, King David didn't hit her hard, just nudged her enough to topple over so that the crown of her head, pin curls and all, went into the mud, and it took Sam all he could do with his brother Joe's help to straighten her up. 'Twas only then that those of us who were down at Skipper Joe's net loft found out about it, from hearing Aunt Sophy expressing her opinion of King David and Jethro Noddy and the community council and a few other things that come into her mind.